And college football, it is here. We got a little taste last weekend. Lots of changes in the sport. Of course, the big headline, Bick, is the advent of the 12-team playoff. It's expanding this year. Here to talk about that with us, the executive director of the Fiesta Bowl, Erik Moses, the new executive director of the college football playoff, Rich Clark, joining us in studio. Gentlemen, happy college football season.
Awesome. Thank you for having us. This is great.
Oh, it is great. So let's just start there because I know as a diehard football fan, this is what I've wanted for decades, right? An expanded playoff, more inclusivity, maybe more room for Cinderellas. Is it going to be as good as expected? Is it going to reach expectations?
It's going to be better than expected. It's going to be spectacular because it opens the aperture now, and there's going to be teams involved that we haven't seen involved before. And so I think the experience for the fans is just going to be amazing. And I think it's not just about the playoff, but it's about what it's going to do for the regular season. Because every week we're going to shape it, we're going to get closer, and it's going to go right down into late November where every game matters. So I'm just excited. I'm fired up.
And I talked about the taste we had of college football last weekend. 10th ranked Florida State gets upset by Georgia Tech in the game in Ireland, and everybody the reaction always in the past was, "Oh, Florida State's out of the running now."
Oh, no.
They're not. They're not at all. So I've always liked that about the idea of a playoff, is keeping teams alive for as long as they can. You shouldn't have to be perfect to compete for a championship, and I love that about this expanded system.
I agree. And like I said, it's going to go all the way into November, and there's going to be teams with one or two losses that are going to be contenders right up to the end. So, Florida State fans, don't lose hope. Keep hope alive and keep driving, and we'll see what happens.
All right, one of the cool things is the Fiesta Bowl's role in this, and Erik, we've talked about this a couple of different times. Fiesta Bowl is going to make history because the first quarterfinal is going to happen right here. That's a lot of excitement. It's a lot of responsibility. Your thoughts on how we're going to make that work?
Well, I think it's fitting. As you guys know, we refer to ourselves as a bowl of first because we have broken ground in a number of different ways during our history. And so I think it's fitting that we host the very first quarterfinal here. We're looking forward to it. We're excited about all these storylines that can come from this new format. You guys know we've seen some interesting upsets in our game, right? And so we have a heart for those matchups and those upsets because that helps to tell the story and it pulls in the fans in waiting. Those of us who are hardcore and want to see football every week and can't get enough of it, we're going to watch regardless. But what about those folks sitting on the sidelines that hear about the big upset in the first round or in the second round? They're going to be following this story all along, as Rich said, until January, till MLK King Day.
Yeah,
when we have the championship.
And I know there's a good chance the Verbo Fiesta Bowl will have the Big 12 champion, and we're on the doorstep of this. I'll be honest, it's weird. Like, I followed ASU football for 40-plus years. They've always been in the Pac-10, Pac-12. They're members of the Big 12. One thing I can say about the uncertainty of the Big 12 is it's exciting, too, and I've never seen projections of the preseason preview of a conference where 6 teams could win it. That's what we're dealing with in the Big 12. I'd love to get your thoughts on that possibility, Erik.
Look, I like the fact that we aren't chalking up at the beginning of the season who's going to be the champ before they even play a game, right? That everybody can be in it and that those fan bases are going to be following this closely and hopefully fighting to play in the Fiesta Bowl on December 31st is a great thing for us.
So, Rich, I want to ask you about this because a lot of people have thought, okay, the inclusivity appeals to a lot of people, getting fresh teams, programs into this playoff. How are we going to, and I say we collectively, how is the sport going to manage the power grab? If, say, the SEC and the Big Ten claim, no, we need 10 of these 12 spots. How do we manage that to keep the product as widespread as it should be?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dan. And here's my thoughts on that. The commissioners, when they were thinking this through, and of course we were helping them think about what this format should look like, the only automatic qualifiers in this whole thing are those 5 top champions, conference champions, and they wanted to value that. And they're the first ones that are going to get into the bracket. After that, it's just about who's playing the best football. It's about who's ranked the highest, who the best teams are, and that's who goes in. Now, it may be that those teams are coming from different or the same conference. You know, maybe
right.
they're coming from SEC, maybe they're coming from Big Ten, but they could come from ACC, Big 12, G5. It could happen. So we have to keep that door open, and I hope. And we're going to look at this, right? After the season happens, after this playoff happens, we're going to do what everyone always should do, step back and look, how do we get better? What do we need to do to make ourselves better? Maybe the format changes a little bit. I'm not sure, but it depends on how this goes. But in the end, we have to keep the door open so that the best teams come, irrespective of what conference they're in. And if the SEC is putting the best teams out there, they should go into the playoff.
We're talking with Erik Moses, the executive director of the Fiesta Bowl, Rich Clark, the college football playoff executive director here on Bickley Marotta Mornings. Another question for you, Rich. This is your first go around in this position with the expanded playoff. And again, I'm real curious to see. I think this is a very positive step for the sport. But there's also been murmurs of already before we see this 12-team playoff, hey, is it going to expand? I'm not asking for a timetable on it, but how much has that subject been on your plate early on in your position?
Yeah, I get asked this all the time. And here's my answer. The commissioners actually did look at other numbers other than 12. They looked at 16, they looked at 14, they even looked at 8. But they wanted to really evaluate what those numbers would mean to how, the extension of the season. How far does that push the season out? What are the opportunities to broadcast these games? What does it do for our student athletes? That's always got to be at the core of the decisions that we make. And they landed on 12 as the number. So right now, 12 is our number. We have to make this playoff spectacular and then step back and look at it and say, do we need to expand, or did we get it right the first time? And we're going to do that. We're not going to tie our hands to staying at 12, but we're going to look at it and really do a good evaluation and understand what's best for the sport.
A lot of great stuff happened at your kickoff luncheon, not only the announcement that the Fiesta Bowl rebranded to the Fiesta Sports Foundation to kind of have a bigger footprint, if you will. You did a remarkable job, Erik, of interviewing Larry Fitzgerald and bringing out that trash-talking side of him. In fact, I still putting aloe on my burns, brother.
He gave you some good ones. He gave you some good ones.
He gave me all that
I'm sure it was all out of love, though.
He gave me all that smoke. But so my question is, did you feel the vibe of a new day and a new era in that setting alone? Because I sure did.
Yeah, the excitement was palpable, I think, in that room. 1,100 people there to hear and talk about and to experience football, which is why we wanted to make it this immersive experience that leans into the excitement of a new season every year. And with this expanded playoff, I mean, there's so much buzz there because all of us, hope springs eternal, right? I'm still thinking, my Tar Heels play on Thursday. Let's see, maybe there's a path somewhere, right? Don't laugh so hard now. Come on, Dan.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
We're talking with Erik Moses and Rich Clark, college football executive directors for the Fiesta Bowl and the college football playoff. Before we let you go, I was just talking about this yesterday. I have a long love affair with college football. I've had a hard time with the bombardment of change that's happened to the sport. And I'd love to get both of your thoughts on this expanded playoff. Do you hear from fans who are like me or like dealing with all these change, conference realignment, NIL, transfer portal? This to me is a big Band-Aid and a big lure to pull people like me back into the sport. Do you hear from people like that?
Yeah, I do. And it's funny, Rich and I were talking about this recently, and knowing that we're in this time where change is necessary and change is happening, how do we hold on to those things that feel familiar to fans so that they want to continue to be involved? And so the marriage of the New Year's Six Bowls inside this expanded playoff allows us to kind of marry old and new, right? We've got a new format, more teams. It's now a tournament where every game is a game of consequence. But hey, I know the Fiesta Bowl. I know the Rose Bowl. Okay, that feels familiar. And I have memories about watching those games and what happened during that. I think that's, in my opinion, the way forward. And that's what I tell fans. Not everything's changing. There are going to be some things that look familiar and feel familiar to you, but the change will be good. Just give it a chance.
I agree. there's some peripheral things that we have to work through in the sport, right? And you've just talked about some of them, Vince, but what I think we should all focus on is really the game and really watch those student athletes get out there and compete. And 98% of them are unaffected by things like NIL, transfer portal.
Yeah, true.
They're out there playing just like students have played for many, many decades. I mean, I was a student athlete. I played 4 years of football at the Air Force Academy. We went to 4 bowl games, and I remember it very vividly. And I'm 60 years old, and I still remember it. And I still have the watches, the memorabilia that we got from it. And the Fiesta Bowl is special, and it's going to stay special to football, and we just are excited about what that's going to do for us.
I was going to ask, what bowl game gave you the best goodie bag back in the day?
Okay,
Was it a Nintendo 64?
Well, actually, that hadn't been invented yet.
Sounds like Atari.
Atari, that's what I mean. It was Atari, that's it.
It was Pong.
That's fantastic.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for coming
Thank you,
in
guys.
and getting us ready for college
Yeah, we're
football.
hyped.
you.
Best of luck with
Thanks
everything
for
this
having
year.
us.
And I'm sure we'll talk again soon. Erik Moses, the executive director of the Fiesta Bowl, Rich Clark, college football playoff executive director, joining us here in studio.
Thanks for watching Bickley and Marotta. Click to see the latest Bickley Blast and hit the button in the middle to subscribe to Arizona Sports.